Un momento, mono. FBI.
Hi, I'm Cellulite Sally. Look at my huge badonkey.
Oh, God. What the? Oh, come on. Hello?
Oh my God, you guys, Heath is here.
This?
Baby got a ride in the car seat.
Two FBI agents, two white socialites. 112 minutes of what most people will tell you is nothing more than a stupid, glorious, early 2000s comedy built entirely on the sight of two black men in wigs and prosthetic cheekbones. And they would be completely right and completely wrong. Because here is the thing nobody talks about when they quote white chicks at parties. When they drop Making My Way Downtown into a group chat. When they call it a comfort movie they have watched 47 times without being able to explain why. Beneath the latex, beneath the one-liners, beneath the Terry Crews love scene that lives permanently in internet history, there is a film that is doing something genuinely radical with the idea of identity. A film that asks, with absolute sincerity hiding inside absolute absurdity, what happens when the mask you put on to fool the world starts telling you the truth about yourself? Kevin and Marcus Copeland go into this assignment as two men who have failed at everything the system asked of them, and they come out the other side having learned something about performance, about race, about class, about the exhausting daily act of being who other people expect you to be. And the reason you laughed so hard in 2004, the reason you still laugh now, is not just because the disguise is ridiculous. It is because somewhere underneath the prosthetics, the film found something true. Something about the masks every single one of us wears. This video is not a recap. This is the full breakdown, the psychological reading, the thematic architecture, and the ending interpretation of white chicks that no other video on YouTube has attempted. And I promise you, by the time we reach the final frame, you will never look at this film the same way again. This video is an independent, transformative work created for review, criticism, commentary, educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. Any third-party content is used only to support original analysis and is not intended to replace or reproduce the original work. So let us start where the film starts, because the opening of White Chicks is doing something structurally clever that almost every viewer misses on a first watch. We meet Kevin Copeland, played by Shawn Wayans, and Marcus Copeland, played by Marlon Wayans, in the middle of an FBI operation that is already falling apart. They are not glamorous agents. They are not suave. They are two brothers who genuinely believe they are smarter than the room, and the film's first 5 minutes are engineered to show you, in real time, exactly how wrong that belief is. The operation fails, not spectacularly, not with explosions, but with the slow, grinding humiliation of two men watching their plan disintegrate while they pretend it is still still working. And this matters. Hold on to this detail, because it becomes the emotional spine of everything that follows. These are not confident men in disguise. These are two people whose entire professional identity is built on a foundation of almost good enough. And the film is going to spend the next 100 minutes asking whether they can become something more than that. The director, Keenen Ivory Wayans, shoots these early FBI scenes flat and institutional. Fluorescent lighting, no score. The camera barely moves. Compare that to what happens once the brothers enter the Hamptons, and you will see a deliberate visual argument. The system they serve does not see them, does not celebrate them, does not give them room to be larger than their failures. The world they are about to infiltrate will give them all the attention they have ever craved. And that contrast is not accidental. That is the thesis statement of the entire film, hiding in the lighting design. Their supervisor, played with magnificent exhaustion, gives them one final assignment. 1. The language of the scene is not threatening. It is worse than that. It is disappointed. He tells them they are being assigned to protect Brittany and Megan Wilson, two wealthy socialite sisters who have received credible kidnapping threats and must be escorted to a high-profile event in the Hamptons. The job is simple. Drive them there. Keep them safe. Do not mess it up. And you can see, in the way Shawn and Marlon play this moment, that the simplicity is what wounds them. They wanted the complex case, the one that proved they belonged. Instead, they are being handed what is essentially a security detail, a glorified driving assignment. And the film lets that sting sit in the silence between the lines. This is where the character psychology becomes essential. Kevin processes the insult by going quiet, by intellectualizing, by pretending the assignment is beneath him. Marcus processes it by getting loud, by joking, by performing confidence he does not feel. Two defense mechanisms, two brothers, same wound. And the reason this matters is that the disguise they are about to adopt will force both of those mechanisms to collapse. You cannot intellectualize your way through being a 23-year-old white woman at a Hamptons dinner party. You cannot joke your way through the vulnerability of being seen, truly seen, by someone who thinks you are someone else. The film knows this. It is building toward that collapse with every scene. And the audience, laughing at the setup, does not yet realize they are watching a character study dressed in a wig. The inciting incident arrives fast, because Keenen Ivory Wayans understands that a comedy about disguise cannot afford to make the audience wait for the disguise. The Wilson sisters, in a moment of vanity that the film plays for laughs, but that is also quietly devastating in its honesty, suffer minor facial injuries and refuse to attend the event. They will not show their damaged faces to the cameras. They will not be photographed looking imperfect. And in that refusal, the film is already telling you what the Hamptons world values: the surface, the image, the performance of flawlessness. The sisters would rather vanish than be seen as less than perfect. And Kevin and Marcus, watching this tantrum, make the decision that launches the entire film. They will become the Wilson sisters. They will wear the faces, walk the walk, attend the event, and catch the kidnappers themselves. Now, on the surface, this is a comedic premise. Two black men becoming two white women. But sit with the psychology of the decision for a moment. These are two men who just had their competence questioned, who were told they are one failure from being removed from the only career they have ever wanted. And their response to that emasculation, to that institutional rejection, is not to prove themselves within the system. It is to become someone else entirely, to erase themselves. And that is not a joke. That is a wound choosing its own bandage. The transformation sequence that follows, the prosthetics, the makeup, the wigs, the full physical reconstruction, is played for enormous comedy, and it earns every single laugh. But watch the faces of Shawn and Marlon during that process. Watch the moment the mirror turns around. What you see in their eyes is not triumph. It is terror dressed as a grin. And that terror is the truest thing in the entire film. What happens next, when those two walk into the Hamptons for the first time, changes the meaning of everything we have just watched. And we are only at the beginning. And let us talk about that transformation sequence properly, because it is doing far more work than the comedy suggests. Keenen Ivory Wayans stages the makeup process as a montage, yes, but look at what the montage is actually structured around. It is not the prosthetics going on. It is the faces disappearing. Every cut takes something away. The jawline, the brow, the skin tone, the hairline. Layer by layer, Kevin and Marcus are being erased, and what is being built in their place is a construction, a fabrication, a performance with a capital P. The scene is scored with light, almost playful music, and the audience laughs because the visual gap between Marlon Wayans and a 23-year-old blonde socialite is enormous and absurd. But the editing rhythm is doing something underneath that laughter. It is methodical, slow, deliberate. Each prosthetic application is given its own beat, its own moment of screen time, as if the film is saying, watch this. Pay attention to what it costs to become someone else. And when the final reveal comes, when the mirror turns and both brothers see themselves as Brittany and Megan Wilson for the first time, the film holds the shot. It does not cut away. It does not rush to the next joke. It lets them stare. And in that stare, if you're watching closely, there is a micro-expression that the script does not name and the comedy does not acknowledge. Recognition, not of the disguise, of the absence. For the first time, they are looking at a version of themselves that the world might actually accept without question. And that recognition is terrifying because it implies that who they were before was not enough. This is the psychological core of White Chicks, and it is hiding in plain sight inside a scene where Marlon Wayans is complaining about his chest. The film trusts you to feel both things simultaneously. The laughter and the ache. The ridiculous and the real. And that trust is why this movie has survived 2 decades while 100 smarter, better reviewed comedies from the same era have been completely forgotten. Now, before they step into the Hamptons, the film gives them one final scene in the world they are leaving. A briefing, a set of rules. The FBI handler walks them through who the Wilson sisters are, how they talk, what they eat, who their friends are, what they care about. And the comedy here is obvious. 2 men memorizing a woman's life like a script. But notice what the briefing actually reveals about the Wilson sisters as characters. They are not written as empty. They are not written as punchlines. They have preferences. They have routines. They have a social ecosystem that functions according to its own internal logic. The film respects them enough to build them, even though they will barely appear on screen. And that respect matters, because it means the disguise is not just about fooling the villains. It is about fooling a world that has its own rules, its own hierarchies, its own cruelties. Kevin and Marcus are not walking into a vacuum. They are walking into a society that will test them, judge them, and try to consume them. And the question the film is quietly asking, the question it will spend the next 90 minutes answering, is whether they can survive that world without losing themselves inside it. Because here is what nobody tells you about putting on a mask. You think you can take it off whenever you want. You think the performance has a clock, a start time, and an end time. But the Hamptons do not work that way. The performance never stops. And the longer you wear the face, the harder it becomes to remember which face was yours first. That is the open loop. That is the question this film will answer by the time the credits roll. And we are about to find out what happens when 2 men who have spent their whole lives being underestimated walk into a room full of people who will never look past the surface. The Hamptons are waiting, and they are not ready. The Hamptons hit Kevin and Marcus like a wall of sound they were not prepared for. And Keenen Ivory Wayans films their arrival the way you would film astronauts stepping onto a foreign planet. The car pulls up, the door opens, and suddenly the frame is saturated. Color everywhere. White fences, manicured hedges, women in sundresses that cost more than their monthly FBI salary. The score shifts from the flat, institutional silence of the bureau into something light, airy, almost mocking in its pleasantness. And the camera, which was locked down and observational in the opening scenes, now floats. It glides. It is seduced by this world even as the characters are overwhelmed by it. And that is the first joke the film plays on its own heroes. They prepared for the disguise. They memorized the names, the mannerisms, the social connections. But nobody prepared them for the sheer sensory aggression of wealth. The way it looks, the way it smells, the way it sounds when a group of women in their 20s laugh at something that was not actually funny, because the social contract of this world demands that you perform enjoyment whether you feel it or not. Kevin, as Brittany Wilson, steps out of the car and immediately performs a smile. You can see Shawn Wayans constructing the expression in real time. The eyes are calculating, the mouth is smiling, and those 2 things are not connected. That disconnect is the performance within the performance, and it is the single most honest visual metaphor in the entire film. He is already acting within the act. He is already 2 layers deep, and the film has barely started. The social ecosystem of the Hamptons introduces itself quickly because this is a world that does not tolerate anonymity. Within minutes of arriving, Kevin and Marcus are surrounded. The friend group materializes. Karen, played by Busy Phillips with an energy that is half golden retriever and half social strategist. Tori, played by Jessica Caulfield, who speaks in a register of perpetual breathless enthusiasm that masks a razor-sharp awareness of hierarchy. And then there are the Vandergelt sisters. Heather, played by Jamie King, who enters every room as if she owns the building it is inside. And Megan, played by Brittany Daniel, who is quieter but no less dangerous because her cruelty is wrapped in concern. The film introduces them all in a single continuous sequence, and the comedy is in the speed. Names, kisses, compliments that are not compliments, questions that are interrogations. Kevin and Marcus are being processed, cataloged, filed. And the genius of the Wayans brothers' physical comedy here is that they play the overwhelm authentically. They are not just 2 men failing to be women. They are 2 people from a completely different socioeconomic universe trying to decode a language they never learned. Every social rule in this world is invisible to them. You do not compliment someone's dress directly. You compliment it obliquely, so the compliment comment implies you could afford something better. You do not say you are tired. You say you are just drained from the weekend, which means you were somewhere more exclusive than here. The screenplay, written by Keenen Ivory Wayans alongside Shawn and Marlon, encodes all of this in the dialogue, and the audience laughs because the brothers keep getting it wrong. But underneath the laughter, the film is documenting something real. The grammar of class, the syntax of exclusion, the way a world protects itself by making its rules feel natural to those who grew up inside them, and impossible to learn for anyone arriving from outside. The first genuine test comes faster than expected. A lunch, a table of 6 women, Kevin and Marcus seated in the middle, expected to carry conversation, to be witty, to be the Wilson sisters. And for approximately 90 seconds, it works. They deflect, they redirect, they laugh at the right moments. Marlon, as Megan, discovers that if he simply agrees with whatever the last person said and adds the word literally, he can survive almost any exchange. It is a brilliant comedic observation about how much of social performance is simply pattern matching, and the audience roars because they recognize the truth of it. But then Heather Vandergeld leans forward and asks a question that is not in the briefing, a specific memory, a shared experience that the real Megan Wilson would have, and the table goes quiet, not dramatically, not with a musical sting, just a small, natural silence. The kind of silence that happens in real conversations when someone says something unexpected, and Marlon freezes. You can see it. A half second where the performance drops, and the man underneath looks out through the eyes of the character. He recovers. He deflects with a joke. The table moves on. But the film has shown you the crack. It has shown you that this disguise is not armor. It is tissue paper. And every conversation, every lunch, every dinner party is going to put another finger against it, pressing, testing, waiting for the moment it tears. That moment is coming. And when it arrives, it will not be funny. Hold on to that, because the film is about to earn your silence after 2 straight minutes of making you laugh. And it is in this same stretch of the Hamptons' arrival that the film introduces the character who will become its most surprising emotional anchor. Latrell Spencer, played by Terry Crews with a physicality that the audience expects to be pure comedy, and that the screenplay quietly subverts about 30 minutes later. Latrell is a professional basketball player, enormous, loud, wealthy. He sees Brittany Wilson, which is to say he sees Marcus in disguise, and he is immediately, catastrophically, publicly smitten. The audience laughs because the visual is absurd. Terry Crews, built like a linebacker, making hard eyes at Marlon Wayans in a blonde wig. But watch what Keenen Ivory Wayans does with the camera during Latrell's first approach. He shoots it in slow motion. He uses a soft focus. He scores it with a genuine romantic swell. He films Latrell's infatuation with the exact same visual language he would use for a real love scene in a real romance film. And that choice is the thesis of the entire Latrell arc. The film is telling you, this feeling is real. The object of the affection may be a construction, but the emotion is not. And that creates a moral question that the film will wrestle with honestly instead of simply laughing away. At what point does deceiving someone about who you are become its own cruelty? Kevin and Marcus did not choose to be loved by Latrell, but they are choosing every single day they maintain the disguise to let that love grow in soil they know is poisoned. That question does not resolve quickly. It follows Latrell through the entire second half of this film, and when it finally lands, it lands with a weight that no one in the audience saw coming, because they were too busy laughing to notice the film was building something tender underneath the spectacle. The fashion show is 3 days away. The kidnappers are circling, and Kevin and Marcus are about to discover that the hardest part of this assignment is not catching the villain. It is surviving the people who believe they are someone else. And this is where the film makes a structural choice that separates it from almost every other comedy in its genre. Most disguised comedies treat the reveal as the climax. The audience waits for the mask to slip. The tension is binary. Will they be caught or won't they? White Chicks rejects that structure. Keenen Ivory Wayans is not interested in the binary. He is interested in the gradient, in the slow, creeping, almost invisible way that the performance starts to colonize the performer. 3 days into the Hamptons, and Kevin is correcting his own posture when no one is watching. Marcus is adjusting his vocal register in the bathroom mirror, not because he needs to for the disguise, but because the disguise has started to feel more natural than his own voice. The film shows this in tiny, almost subliminal beats, a gesture that lingers a frame too long, a laugh that comes out in the wrong register and then is quickly swallowed. These are not jokes. They are observations, and they accumulate. By the time the second act reaches its midpoint, you are no longer watching 2 men pretending to be women. You are watching 2 men negotiating with a third self that has begun to exist independently of either. That is not a comedy premise. That is an identity crisis staged in pastel sundresses, and the audience is laughing because the surface is absurd, but something underneath the laughter is uncomfortable, something true. And the film trusts you to carry both feelings at once without resolving either one for you. The kidnapping thread tightens here because the film cannot sustain pure social comedy for its full runtime and knows it. A note arrives. A phone call with a distorted voice. A car parked outside the house that was not there yesterday. The threat is no longer abstract. It has a shape. It has a schedule. And Kevin and Marcus now face a problem that the disguise was supposed to solve but is actually making worse. They cannot go to the FBI and say, "We are the agents you assigned, but we are currently posing as the victims, and the real victims are hiding in a hotel room." They cannot blow their cover without blowing the case, and they cannot abandon the case without losing their careers. They are trapped inside the performance. And this is the moment where the screenplay, which has been generous and playful, turns the screws. The brothers argue. Not a comedic argument, not a shouting match played for physical laughs. A real, quiet, exhausted argument in a bedroom at 2 in the morning, where the wigs are off but the personas are not, and they cannot separate the two anymore. Kevin says they should call it in. Marcus says they are close. Kevin says close to what? Marcus cannot answer. And the silence that follows is the longest the film has been silent, and it lands like a stone in the audience's chest because every viewer in that theater has been in an argument where the other person cannot finish their sentence because finishing it means admitting they are lost. This is the emotional breather the film needs. After 40 minutes of social comedy, of entrances and exits and lunch table panic, the story exhales. The pacing slows. The score drops out entirely. Two men sit on the edge of a bed in borrowed nightgowns and try to remember why they started this. And the answer, when it comes, is not heroic. It is not about justice or duty. Marcus says, quietly, that he just wanted to prove he could do one thing right. One assignment. One complete, successful, undeniable proof that he belonged in that building with the fluorescent lights. And Kevin does not argue, because it is the same answer. It has always been the same answer. The disguise was never about the case. It was about being enough. And now they are inside the disguise, and the world is telling them they are beautiful, they are desired, they are interesting, they are seen. And they have to decide whether they are going to let that feeling become the reason they stay. The fashion show is 2 days away. The kidnappers know where they are, and the performance is no longer something they are doing. It is something they are becoming. The fashion show announces itself not as an event, but as a gravitational force. 3 days out, and every conversation in the Hamptons bends toward it. The designers arrive. The fittings begin. The houses fill with garment bags and steaming irons, and women standing on furniture while someone pins a hem. Kevin and Marcus are expected to participate fully, because the Wilson sisters are not guests at this show. They are on the program. They are walking. And the film treats this revelation as a comedy set piece, which it is, but it also treats it as an escalation of the central psychological problem, which is where the screenplay earns its depth. You can fake a lunch. You can fake a cocktail party. You can fake a conversation about summer homes by nodding and repeating the word literally. You cannot fake a runway. A runway is 300 people watching your body move through space in a straight line, and every flaw in the performance is visible. There is nowhere to hide, no deflection, no one else talking over you, just you in the walk. And Kevin and Marcus know this. You can see them processing it in the fitting room, standing in half-pin dresses while a seamstress talks to them about posture and shoulder angles, and their eyes are doing the math. How do you walk like a woman who has been walking in heels since she was 14? How do you make 3 seconds of forward motion look like a lifetime of practiced ease? The film answers this with a training montage, because of course it does, because the genre demands it. But Keenen Ivory Wayans shoots it differently than you expect. He does not score it with triumph. He scores it with something almost melancholy, a slow piano line, and the shots are not wide and celebratory. They are close, intimate, focused on the feet, the ankles, the way the heel finds the ground, and the body has to trust it. This is not a comedy montage. This is a film about 2 men learning to surrender control of their own bodies to a performance, and the melancholy in the score is the film acknowledging what that surrender costs. The dinner party that follows is the film's most sustained comedic sequence, and it earns that title through sheer structural ambition. 12 people, 1 table, a 5-course meal, and Kevin and Marcus are seated directly across from Heather Vandergeld, who has decided, for reasons the film never fully explains but does not need to, that something about the Wilson sisters is off. The entire sequence plays like a thriller disguised as a comedy. Every question Heather asks is a probe. Every compliment is a test. Did you love the new restaurant in Sag Harbor? Is not small talk. It is a tripwire. If you say yes, you are lying, because the restaurant closed last month. If you say no, you reveal that you have not been there, which contradicts the Wilson sisters' known habits. Kevin navigates it by going vague. Marcus navigates it by getting drunk. And the film lets both strategies work and fail simultaneously, because that is how real social survival functions. You cannot be perfect. You can only be lucky. The physical comedy here is extraordinary, and it is worth naming specifically what makes it work. The Wayans brothers are not just doing broad reaction faces. They are playing the comedy of restraint. The joke is not not that Marcus spits out wine. The joke is that Marcus almost spits out wine, swallows it, smiles, and then has a tiny involuntary shudder that only the camera catches. The audience laughs at the shudder because they recognize it. Everyone has had a moment where they swallowed something they should not have, metaphorically or literally, and had to keep smiling. The comedy is not in the disguise. The comedy is in the universal experience of performing composure while falling apart inside. And that is why this scene works 20 years later when 100 broader, louder comedies from the same era play as relics. Latrell Spencer makes his move at this dinner, and the film handles it with a tenderness that surprises you if you came in expecting only Terry Crews physical comedy. He does not grab. He does not shout. He pulls out a chair. He asks if Megan, which is to say Marcus, is comfortable. He notices that her glass is empty and fills it without being asked. And the camera lingers on Marlon Wayans' face during these small gestures. And what you see there is not panic. It is not the frantic comedy of a man trying to avoid being discovered. It is confusion. Genuine, unperformed confusion. Because no one in Marcus Copeland's actual life has ever done these things for him. No one has pulled out his chair. No one has noticed his glass. The disguise, which was supposed to be a cage, is handing him a kind of attention he never received as himself. And the film does not make a joke of this. It lets the moment sit. It lets the audience feel the strange, uncomfortable tenderness of a man being treated gently for the first time and not knowing what to do with it. This is the Latrell arc's true engine, not the absurdity of the attraction, the humanity of it. And it raises the question the film will not fully answer until the final act. If the love is real, does it matter that the face is fake? Is the feeling diminished because the object of it is a construction? Marcus does not know, and the audience does not know. And the film is brave enough to leave that not knowing unresolved for another 30 minutes. The kidnapping thread snaps back into focus here because the film cannot let the emotional comedy run unchecked. A second note arrives, more specific this time. A location, a time, a demand. And Kevin, reading it in the bathroom with the door locked, does something the audience has not seen him do before. He does not deflect. He does not intellectualize. He is afraid, genuinely, physically afraid. And the film marks this moment with a single close-up, held for 3 seconds, of his hands shaking. The prosthetics make the fear look different. The face that trembles is not his face, but the hands are. And that small detail, the hands belonging to him while the face belongs to someone else, is the film's visual argument about identity made literal. You can change the surface. You cannot change what is underneath. The kidnappers are not interested in the performance. They are interested in the bodies, the real bodies. And somewhere in the Hamptons, someone knows exactly who the Wilson sisters are, exactly where they are staying, and exactly what they are worth. The question is whether that someone is sitting at this dinner table, smiling across the candlelight, pouring wine, asking about Sag Harbor. The film plants that suspicion and does not confirm it. Not yet, but it lets you look at every face at that table and wonder. The fashion show is tomorrow. The walk is rehearsed. The dresses are pinned. And somewhere in this beautiful, sunlit, manicured world, someone is planning to take 2 women and make them disappear. Kevin and Marcus are about to walk a runway in borrowed heels, and they do not yet know that the real performance, the one that will test everything the disguise has taught them, has not started yet. It starts tomorrow, and it starts in front of everyone. And the night before the runway, the film gives us the scene that most viewers remember as a throwaway, but that is actually doing the heaviest thematic lifting in the entire second act. Kevin and Marcus sit in front of the vanity mirror, removing the day's makeup. Not all of it, just the surface layer, the lipstick, the blush, the careful contouring. And as they wipe it away, they talk. Not about the case, not about the kidnappers, about their mother, a single memory. She used to put makeup on before the grocery store, not because she needed to, because, as she told them once, the world treats a woman differently when she looks like she tried. And both boys, who were 10 and 12 at the time, did not understand it then, but they understand it now. Sitting in this bathroom, in the Hamptons, wearing the faces of 2 women they have never met, they understand that the performance is not the exception. The performance is the rule. Their mother performed every single day, for the cashier, for the neighbors, for the world that decided her face was not enough unless it was decorated. And the disguise they are wearing is just a louder, more expensive version of the same daily act. The scene lasts 90 seconds. The film does not underline it. There is no swell of music, no meaningful glance into the camera, just 2 men with half-removed makeup, talking quietly about a woman who is no longer alive, realizing that they have been performing their entire lives and simply never had the vocabulary for it. This is the scene that elevates White Chicks above its genre. Not the jokes, not the physical comedy. This quiet, unforced moment of recognition. And if you blink, you will miss it. But if you do not blink, it restructures everything you thought the film was about. The morning of the fashion show arrives with a specific kind of dread that only performance anxiety can produce. The backstage area is chaos. Hair dryers, steam, designers screaming in 3 languages, models stretching, and Kevin and Marcus Marcus are in the middle of it, being dressed, being powdered, being positioned. The film shoots this sequence in tight, claustrophobic close-ups, hands adjusting straps, fingers pinning hair, a brush across a cheekbone. The camera does not pull back. It stays in the detail, and the effect is suffocating. You feel the weight of the preparation, the accumulation of layers. Each brushstroke is another lie being applied, and the film lets you feel the claustrophobia of it. Marcus, in particular, is quiet here. The joking has stopped. He is focused in a way the audience has not seen. And the reason, which the screenplay implies but does not state, is that he is no longer acting. Somewhere in the last 48 hours, the performance became habit. The walk became natural. The voice became automatic. And now, backstage, with 300 people about to watch him cross a stage, the terror is not that he will be discovered. The terror is that he will not be. That he will walk out there and be convincing. And that being convincing will mean something about who he actually is that he is not ready to confront. This is the all is lost emotional beat arriving early, not as plot collapse, but as identity collapse. The stakes are not the case anymore. The stakes are the self. And the film asks, in the silence of that backstage mirror, whether you can survive being someone else so thoroughly that you forget where they end and you begin. The runway itself is filmed as a single unbroken sequence, and this is a directorial choice worth naming explicitly. Keenen Ivory Wayans does not cut between Kevin walking and Marcus walking. He does not intercut the audience reactions. He does not fragment the moment into safe little pieces. He lets each walk play in real time, full body, head to toe, in one continuous take. And the effect is that the audience cannot look away, cannot escape, cannot laugh from a comfortable distance. You are in the room. You are watching. And the film dares you to decide whether this is funny or whether it is something else entirely. Kevin walks first. His walk is careful, measured. He has rehearsed it. You can see the rehearsal in it. Every step is a decision. And it works. But it works like a student passing an exam. Correct, controlled, alive only in the technical sense. Then Marcus walks, and the room changes. Because Marcus does not walk. Marcus arrives. There is a difference. Kevin performed the walk. Marcus became it. And the audience in the film, the 300 Hamptons guests, they respond. They lean forward. They applaud. And the camera catches Marlon Wayans' face in that moment. And it is not triumph. It is grief. Because he is being seen. Truly, fully seen. And the face they are seeing is not his. And he will never know, for the rest of his life, whether the applause was for him or for the mask. That question does not resolve. The film does not owe you an answer, but it plants the question in your chest and leaves it there, and 20 years later, it is still sitting there, and that is why you keep coming back to this movie. The fashion show is a success. The disguise held. The walk landed. And somewhere in that audience, the person planning to take the Wilson sisters is watching and clapping and smiling and waiting for the lights to go down. The real show has not started. It starts tonight, and it will not be rehearsed. The fashion show ends, and the Hamptons exhale. The applause fades. The designers embrace. The champagne appears, because in this world, champagne is not a celebration. It is a punctuation mark. It means the performance portion of the evening is complete and the social portion has begun. Kevin and Marcus are surrounded, congratulated, kissed on both cheeks, told they were divine and effortless and absolutely serving. And every compliment lands on them like a small stone, because they know none of it is for them. It is for Brittany, for Megan, for the women they are not. And the film lingers on this specific loneliness, the loneliness of being praised for a performance you did not choose, in a face that is not yours, in a room where no one would look at you twice if the prosthetics came off. Keenen Ivory Wayans shoots the post-show reception in wide, drifting shots. The camera floats through the crowd like a ghost. It passes Kevin and Marcus without stopping. And that visual choice is the film's quiet argument. In this world, you are only as real as your surface. Remove the surface, and you become invisible. The brothers feel it. You can see them scanning the room, looking for one person who sees them, not the disguise, them. And they do not find one, because no one here can. The disguise is total, and the total disguise is its own prison. This is not a joke anymore. This is the cost, and the film is asking you to sit with it, to feel the weight of it, before the next sequence arrives to pull you back into momentum. The evening deepens, and the film introduces its most sustained sequence of social danger. A private dinner, smaller than before. 8 people, a dining room with candles and a view of the ocean, and a host whose name Kevin and Marcus do not recognize. And this is where the screenplay tightens its grip, because at this dinner, the questions are no longer casual. They are specific. They are pointed. Someone at this table knows something is wrong. The film does not tell you who. It distributes the suspicion across 3 faces, 3 glances, 3 small moments of hesitation in the conversation, and it asks you to choose. Is it Heather Vandergeld, who keeps watching Marcus's hands as if she is counting his knuckles? Is it the host, who asks about a trip to Capri that the real Wilson sisters took 2 years ago and waits, with absolute stillness, for the answer? Or is it Tori, who leans close to Karen at one point and whispers something that makes Karen's smile freeze for half a second, the film gives you all three options and confirms none of them. And that is the genius of the sequence. It makes you complicit in the paranoia. You are watching the same way the brothers are watching, scanning, calculating, trying to determine whether the silence after a question is curiosity or accusation. The comedy here is thinner, more strained. The laughs come, but they come late, after the tension has already peaked. And that is deliberate. The film is teaching you that in this world, humor is a survival tool, not a luxury. You laugh because the alternative is to acknowledge that you are trapped, exposed, and running out of places to hide. Latrell finds Marcus on the terrace after dinner, and this scene is the emotional center of the entire second half. He does not come on strong. He does not perform. He simply stands next to him, looks at the ocean, and says, "You seem tired in there." 3 words. And Marcus, who has been performing for 16 hours straight, who has smiled and deflected and walked and danced and been Brittany Wilson since sunrise, feels something crack. Not the disguise, something underneath it, because no one in the Hamptons has asked how he is. They have asked how he looks, how the dress was, how the walk went, how the evening was. No one has asked how he is. And Latrell, who is enormous and loud and plays basketball for a living, who should by every law of this film's genre be a punchline, asks how he is. And Marcus answers, not as Brittany, not as Megan, as himself, filtered through the disguise, but himself. He says, "Yeah, I am tired." And the audience laughs, because the delivery is Marlon Wayans, because the wig is slightly crooked, because the visual is still absurd. But the laughter is softer here, warmer, because the film has earned the right to be tender inside the comedy, and it does not waste that right. Latrell nods, does not push, does not ask for more, just stands there, and the film holds the shot. 2 figures on a terrace, one enormous, one in a wig, both quiet, both, in their own way, performing a version of themselves that they hope the other person will accept. This is the scene that makes the Latrell arc work. Not the basketball, not the physical comedy. This quiet, this mutual recognition between 2 people who are both hiding something and both choosing, in this moment, not to hide it from each other. And then the phone rings. Kevin answers it. The voice on the other end is calm, measured, and completely without emotion. It says a location, a time, tomorrow, and it says, "Bring the sisters, or we bring them ourselves." And it hangs up. The line goes dead. And Kevin stands in the middle of the party, holding the phone, surrounded by laughter and music and clinking glasses, and he is completely alone. The film cuts the score. The ambient sound of the party drops away. For 3 seconds, there is only the sound of his breathing and the faint ocean noise from the terrace. The kidnapping is no longer a threat. It is a schedule. It is a demand with a deadline. And Kevin and Marcus cannot call the FBI without revealing themselves, cannot reveal themselves without losing everything, cannot walk away without 2 women being taken. They are inside the trap now, fully, completely, with no exit that does not require them to sacrifice something they cannot get back. The Hamptons glitter around them. The party continues. No one knows. No one sees. And tomorrow, they will have to walk into a location they do not control, face a person they have not identified, and protect 2 women they have never met while wearing the faces of those women. The disguise is no longer a tool. It is a cage, and the door is closing. What happens next will require everything the performance has taught them. Every walk, every deflection, every smile that hit a scream. Tomorrow is not a rehearsal. Tomorrow is the thing they dressed up for, and the film is going to make them pay for every second of it. The night stretches, the party thins, and Kevin and Marcus find themselves back in the house, back in the bathroom, back in front of the mirror. This has become the film's ritual. Every crisis leads here. Every confrontation ends with 2 men and a mirror and the slow removal of a face. But tonight the removal is different. Tonight they do not take the makeup off. They leave it on, because tomorrow they will need it from the first second, and neither of them wants to go through the process of putting it back on. So they sleep in it, and the film shows this. Shows them lying in bed, still Brittany and Megan, still in the faces of 2 women they met once. And the image is haunting in a way the comedy does not prepare you for. They look like people who have forgotten how to be themselves. The disguise has become the default. The real faces are underneath now, buried. And Marcus, staring at the ceiling, says the thing that has been building since the transformation. He says, "What if I take this off tomorrow and I do not recognize what is underneath?" He says it quietly, almost as a joke, but Kevin does not laugh, because Kevin has been thinking the same thing. And the film lets that silence hold. 2 men in borrowed beds, in borrowed faces, afraid of what they will find when the performance finally ends. This is not comedy. This is the most honest scene in the film, and it is played in stillness, in the dark, with the sound of the ocean outside and the faint creak of a house that belongs to someone else. The disguise was supposed to be temporary, a tool, a means to an end, but tools change the hand that holds them. And Kevin and Marcus have been holding this one for 3 days, and it has reshaped their grip, and they do not know if the grip will go back to how it was. This is what the film has been building toward since the first prosthetic was applied. Not the case, not the kidnappers. This, the moment the mask becomes the face. Morning comes gray, not the bright, saturated Hamptons morning warning the film has been giving you for 3 days. Gray, flat. The color has drained out of the world, and the camera notices it. The score is absent. No piano, no strings, just ambient sound, wind, distant traffic, the creak of the house settling. Kevin and Marcus dress in silence. The routine is automatic now. The dress, the shoes, the hair, the final check in the mirror. But the energy is different. There is no panic, no frantic last-minute adjustment. Just the calm of people who have done something so many times that the doing has become unconscious. And that calm is more terrifying than any panic, because it means the performance has fully integrated. They are not putting on Brittany and Megan anymore. They are starting the day as them. The disguise is not a layer. It is the skin. And when they walk out of the house and into the gray morning, the film shoots them from behind. In a wide shot, 2 figures in dresses walking toward a black car, and they look exactly like the Wilson sisters. Not approximately, not comedically, exactly. And the audience, who has been laughing at the gap between the Wayans brothers and the women they are portraying, suddenly cannot see the gap anymore. And that is the film's final argument about performance. If you do it long enough, if you commit fully, if you surrender to it, the audience stops seeing the actor. They see only the character, and the actor disappears. And Kevin and Marcus are disappearing. Right now, in this gray morning, walking toward a car that will take them to a location they do not know, to face a person they have not identified, wearing faces that are no longer entirely fake. The engine starts, the car pulls away, and the Hamptons, with their white fences and their manicured hedges and their champagne and their casual cruelties, recede in the rearview mirror like a dream that is already losing its color. What is ahead is not a party, not a dinner, not a runway. What is ahead is the thing the disguise was built for, and the disguise is not going to protect them. It is going to be the only thing that can save them, and it might not be enough. The car turns a corner, the houses stop, the road opens up, and for the first time in 3 days, Kevin and Marcus are outside the world that made them. They are in the open, exposed, visible, and somewhere ahead, someone is waiting. And that someone does not care about the walk, or the dress, or the voice, or the 3 days of rehearsal. That someone wants what is underneath. And the film is about to find out whether there is still something underneath to find. The morning they leave the Hamptons, the genre of the film shifts beneath the audience's feet, and it does so without a single musical cue to warn them. For 90 minutes, White Chicks has been a comedy of manners, a social thriller where the weapons are side eyes and passive-aggressive compliments. But when Kevin and Marcus check their secure FBI line and find a video file waiting for them, the comedy stops. The video shows the real Brittany and Megan Wilson, tied to chairs in a dimly lit room, terrified, crying, their perfect hair ruined, their expensive clothes wrinkled. The kidnappers have them. The threat was never a bluff. And the realization hits Kevin and Marcus with the force of a physical blow. The FBI is not coming to help. They burned their credibility days ago when they botched the initial operation. Their supervisor thinks they are on a suspended security detail, not actively investigating a high-profile extortion plot. They are entirely, completely on their own. This is the moment the film demands that the audience take the disguise seriously. Up until now, the prosthetics were a punchline, a visual gag. But to save these 2 women, Kevin and Marcus cannot take the masks off. If they walk into that warehouse as 2 black male FBI agents, the kidnappers will shoot them on sight. If they walk in as the Wilson sisters, they might just buy enough time to get close. The performance is no longer about fooling a dinner party. It is about weaponizing the villain's expectations. The villain expects 2 helpless, terrified socialites. He expects victims who do not know how to fight, who do not know how to shoot, who will cry and beg and comply. And Kevin and Marcus are about to give him exactly what he expects, right up until the second they do not. The car speeds toward the industrial district, the pastel colors of the Hamptons fading into the gray concrete of the city, and the film visually strips away the luxury. No more mansions, no more champagne, just 2 people in wigs driving toward a warehouse, armed with nothing but the psychological armor they have spent the last 3 days building. And there is a profound, uncomfortable empathy in this sequence. When Marcus watches the video of Megan Wilson crying, he does not mock her. The man who spent the first act rolling his eyes at her vanity now watches her terror and feels a genuine, protective surge of anger. The disguise forced him to live inside her social skin, to experience the world's gaze on her, and that experience created a bond that the real Megan will never even know exists. He is not saving a target anymore. He is saving a version of himself. The stakes have transcended the badge. They have become deeply, uncomfortably personal, and that shift changes the entire temperature of the movie. The journey to the warehouse is where the film resolves its most surprising emotional thread, and it does so by crashing its 2 most disparate tones into one another. Marcus is driving. Kevin is navigating. The tension in the car is suffocating. And then, a massive black SUV pulls up alongside them, and the window rolls down to reveal Latrell Spencer. Terry Crews plays this moment with an earnestness that that borders on the heartbreaking. He followed them. He was worried about Megan. He saw them leaving the Hamptons in a rush, and his instinct, the instinct of a man who has fallen genuinely in love, was to protect her. And here is where the screenplay faces its greatest structural test. How do you handle the romantic interest when the object of his affection is literally two men in a car racing toward a gunfight? The easy comedic route would be to have Luttrell figure it out, scream, and run away. But White Chicks refuses the easy route. Luttrell does not know. He just sees the woman he loves in danger, and he commits. He tells them to follow him. He uses his size, his vehicle, his sheer physical presence to clear the road. And Marcus, watching Luttrell risk his life for a lie, experiences the ultimate moral crisis of the film. He is letting a good man bleed for a phantom. The guilt is written all over Marlon Wayans' face, visible even through the heavy silicone prosthetics. This is the emotional breather right before the climax, the moment where the film asks you to feel the cruelty of the deception. Luttrell is offering genuine, unconditional protection, and Marcus can only accept it by continuing to deceive him. It is a betrayal wrapped in a rescue, and the film does not let you look away from the cost of it. When they arrive at the docks, the physical environment is harsh, loud, and unforgiving. The ocean wind whips at their dresses. The corrugated metal of the warehouse groans. The world of the Hamptons is entirely gone, replaced by the brutal reality of the criminal underworld. And as they step out of the car, adjusting their wigs one last time, the film visually frames them not as comedians in drag, but as warriors putting on their armor. The walk toward the warehouse door is shot in slow motion, a deliberate homage to every action movie climax you have ever seen, but the subjects are two men in sundresses. The absurdity is there, but the courage is real. They are terrified. Their hands are shaking, but they do not stop walking. The performance has become their bravery, and the audience suddenly finds themselves holding their breath. Inside the warehouse, the film executes its final major twist, and it is a twist that works precisely because the film has spent the last hour training you to look at the social hierarchy of the Hamptons with suspicion. The kidnapper steps out of the shadows, and it is Warren Vandergeld, the father's rival, the man who smiled at them at the dinner party, the man who asked about Capri, the man who poured the wine. The reveal lands with a satisfying, cynical thud because it confirms everything the film has been arguing about wealth and power. The monster is not a stranger from the outside. The monster is the man sitting across the table, the man who belongs to the same country club, the man who shakes your hand while calculating your ransom value. Warren Vandergeld is not a criminal mastermind. He is a desperate businessman who decided that kidnapping was just another form of hostile takeover. And when he sees the Wilson sisters walk in, he smiles the exact same smile he gave them at the dinner party. He expects them to cower. He expects them to cry. And for the first 30 seconds of the confrontation, Kevin and Marcus give him exactly that. They play the victims perfectly. They tremble. They beg. They ask why he is doing this. It is a masterclass in tactical performance. They are feeding his ego, stroking his villainous monologue, keeping him talking while they map the room, count the guards, and look for an exit. The audience is laughing, but it is a nervous, breathless laughter because the physical danger is real. The guns are real. The zip ties are real. And the moment the performance slips, the moment Warren realizes that the women in front of him have the shoulder width and the center of gravity of male athletes, the violence will start. The tension in this scene is engineered through the audience's anticipation of the break. We know the mask has to come off. We know the fight has to start. And the film stretches that rubber band as tight as it possibly can, letting Warren monologue about his financial ruin, letting him step closer, letting him reach out to touch the face of his hostage, right up until the absolute last millisecond before the snap. And when the snap finally comes, it is not a comedic slip. It is a deliberate, violent choice. Kevin drops the voice. Marcus drops the posture, and the warehouse goes dead silent. The transition from victim to threat is instantaneous, and it is the most electrifying moment in the entire picture, shifting the genre completely into an action thriller. The fight sequence that follows is a brilliant piece of physical filmmaking because it refuses to abandon the premise of the disguise. Kevin and Marcus do not suddenly become John Wick. They do not execute flawless martial arts choreography. They fight like two men who are severely restricted by their clothing, their footwear, and their prosthetics. The comedy comes from the friction between their FBI training and their current physical reality. Marcus trying to kick a guard while wearing 3-inch heels and a tight pencil skirt is hilarious, but it is also genuinely desperate. You feel the physical limitation. You feel the panic. Every punch thrown is a scramble. Every dodge is an accident. And yet, they are winning because the guards are holding back. The guards think they are fighting terrified socialites. They are not bracing for a right hook from a woman in a sundress. That cognitive dissonance is the brothers' only weapon, and they use it ruthlessly. But the film knows that a comedy fight scene cannot sustain the climax of a thriller. The stakes must escalate. escalate. And they escalate when Warren Vandergeld, realizing he has lost control of the room, pulls out a gun and aims it not at Kevin and Marcus, but at the real Wilson sisters, who are still tied to the chairs in the background. This is the all-is-lost moment of the film. The tactical advantage is gone. The element of surprise is gone. The physical fight stops, and the emotional reality crashes back in. Kevin and Marcus can fight the guards, but they cannot outrun a bullet. They have to surrender. They have to drop their weapons, raise their hands, and let Warren take control again. And in that moment of surrender, the disguise finally breaks. Not because the makeup falls off, but because the voice drops. Kevin speaks to Warren in his own voice, his real voice, the voice of a black male FBI agent. And the look of absolute, paradigm-shattering confusion on Warren Vandergeld's face is the payoff for 110 minutes of setup. The villain does not just lose the fight. His entire understanding of reality fractures. But the film does not let the heroes celebrate, because the gun is still pointed at the hostages. The psychological victory is complete, but the physical danger is at its absolute peak. What happens next will require more than a disguise. It will require a sacrifice. And as the camera pushes in on Marcus's face, beneath the sweat and the melting silicone, you realize that the man who walked into this warehouse is not the same man who drove out of the Hamptons, and he knows exactly what he has to do next, regardless of the cost. The sacrifice the film demands is not physical. It is not a bullet taken or a fall endured. It is the surrender of the performance itself. Kevin, still in his own voice, still holding his hands in the air, makes a choice. He stops protecting the disguise. He steps forward. One step, two, and he talks to Warren Vandergeld not as Brittany Wilson, not as a socialite, not as a victim, but as a man. And what he says is not a speech. It is not a monologue. It is 3 sentences. He tells Warren that the money is not worth this. He tells him that the man Warren used to be, the man who sat at dinner tables and smiled and poured wine, is still in there. And he tells him to put the gun down. The genius of this moment is that it only works because of the disguise. If Kevin had walked in as an FBI agent, Warren would have heard a cop reading him a script. But Kevin has spent 3 days inside Warren's world. He has eaten his food, laughed at his jokes, sat across from him while he talked about Capri. And Warren knows this, knows that the person speaking to him has been inside his life, has seen his face across a candlelit table, has been present in his world. The performance, which was built to deceive, has accidentally built something real, a connection, a thread of shared experience. And Kevin pulls on that thread, and Warren hesitates. The gun wavers, not because the words are profound, because the voice behind them is real. And in a film about masks and faces and the lies we wear to survive, the single most powerful weapon turns out to be honesty. The moment Warren's finger lifts off the trigger, the film exhales. The score returns, a single low note, sustained, holding the room in place. And then the warehouse doors burst open. FBI, backup, the cavalry, arriving late as always. And in the chaos that follows, Warren is restrained, the guards are down, the gun is on the floor, and Kevin and Marcus stand in the middle of it all, still in dresses, still in wigs, still in faces that are not theirs, and they do not move. They just stand there, breathing, alive, and the camera holds on them for 4 full seconds before cutting away. For seconds of stillness in the middle of an action climax. And those 4 seconds are the film saying, look at them, really look at them. This is what it cost. This is what they carried. And they made it. Barely, but they made it. The real Wilson sisters are untied, and the film handles this reunion with a restraint that surprises you after the noise of the fight. There is no grand speech, no tearful gratitude. Brittany and Megan are shaken, confused, their mascara running, their hair matted. They look at Kevin and Marcus, at the faces, at the prosthetics, at the wigs, and for a long moment, they simply stare, because the women who saved them are wearing their own faces. And the film lets that image land without commentary. 2 pairs of women, one real and one constructed, looking at each other across the concrete floor of a warehouse. And then Megan, the vain one, the one who refused to leave her hotel room because of a scratch on her cheek, does something unexpected. She steps forward. She looks at Marcus, and she says, quietly, thank you. 2 words, no irony, no performance, just gratitude. And Marcus nods, and that is all the film gives you. No hug, no speech, no musical swell, just 2 words and a nod. And it is enough. It is more than enough, because the entire film has been building toward the question of whether these 2 men could be seen, truly seen, beneath the construction. And in this moment, they are. Not by the Hamptons, not by the socialites, not by the dinner party crowd, by the one person whose face they stole. And she sees them, and she says thank you. And the performance, for the first time in 3 days, is completely unnecessary. Kevin and Marcus do not need to be Brittany and Megan in this moment. They just need to be the men who walked into a warehouse to save 2 strangers. And that is enough. The film trusts you to feel the weight of that. It does not underline it. It does not score it. It simply lets it exist. And the audience, if they are paying attention, feels something shift in their chest. Something quiet. Something earned. Latrell Latrell finds them outside. And this is the scene the film has been building toward since the terrace conversation, since the dinner party, since the slow-motion first approach. He walks up. He looks at Marcus. He looks at the wig, the silicone, the dress. And the film does not play this for comedy. There is no reveal gag, no double take, no spit take. Latrell looks at Marcus, and Marcus looks back, and neither of them speaks for a long time. And then Latrell says, "You are not her." And Marcus says, "No," and Latrell nods. And he walks away. And the audience laughs, because the delivery is Terry Crews, because the absurdity of the situation is undeniable. But the laughter is thin, fragile, because underneath it, the film has just shown you a man's heart breaking in real time. Latrell loved someone who did not exist. He risked his life for a construction. And now the construction is standing in front of him in a ruined wig. And the man underneath is a stranger. And the film does not fix it, does not give Latrell a consolation prize, does not have him say it's okay, or we can still be friends. He walks away, and the camera follows him for 3 steps, then cuts back to Marcus, who watches him go. And Marlon Wayans plays that moment with a devastation that the prosthetics cannot hide. Because Marcus knows what he did. He knows the cost of the deception. He saved the case. He saved the sisters. He saved his career. And the price was the one genuine connection the disguise gave him. The film does not balance the ledger. It does not say the trade was worth it. It simply shows you the cost and lets you decide. And that is the bravest choice in the entire screenplay. To let the comedy end on an unresolvable ache. To let the audience carry the weight of a joke that stopped being funny. The ride back is silent. No music. No dialogue. Kevin and Marcus sit in the back of an FBI vehicle, the Wilson sisters in another car, the Hamptons receding in the distance. The prosthetics are still on. The wigs are still on. They have not removed the disguise yet. And the film makes a pointed choice here. It does not show the transformation in reverse. There is no montage of peeling off the silicone, no satisfying reveal of the real faces underneath. The brothers remain Brittany and Megan for the entire ride, because the film understands that the transformation cannot be undone simply by removing the materials. 3 days of being someone else has changed the architecture of who they are. The walk is different now. The posture, the way they hold their hands, the way they look at the world. These are not things you can wipe off with a solvent. They are things you carry. And as the vehicle crosses back from the industrial district into the city, the film shoots their faces in profile, the last light of the afternoon catching the edge of the prosthetic cheekbones, and you can see them both thinking the same thought. Who am I now? The question has no answer. Not yet. The film will not give you one in the next 5 minutes. It will not wrap this up neatly, because identity is not a disguise you remove at the end of the day. It is the residue of every performance you have ever given. And Kevin and Marcus have given the performance of their lives. The badge is waiting. The career is saved. The case is closed. But the men who filed the paperwork will not be the same men who walked into that warehouse. The film knows this. You know this. And the silence in the back of that car is the sound of 2 people trying to remember what they sounded like before they learned to be someone else. The Hamptons are behind them. The disguise is still on. And the final act is waiting to ask them one last question. Can you go home? And here is what the film understands about endings that most comedies refuse to accept. You cannot simply cut the performance and expect the person underneath to be intact. 3 days of being Brittany and Megan Wilson did not just change Kevin and Marcus's faces. It changed their nervous systems. The way they enter a room, the way they hold a glass, the way they tilt their head when someone is speaking. These are small things, invisible things, but they are the architecture of a self, and that architecture has been renovated. When the FBI vehicle finally stops, when the doors open, when the fluorescent lights of the bureau hit them again, Kevin and Marcus step out, and the building looks the same. The desks, the carpet, the motivational posters, but they do not look the same to the brothers. Everything is smaller, flatter, less forgiving, and their supervisor is waiting, standing in the corridor with his arms crossed, his face arranged in the specific expression of a man who has been preparing to deliver a reprimand for 3 days. He opens his mouth, and then he stops, because the case file is on his desk. The Wilson sisters are safe. Warren Vandergeld is in custody. The kidnapping ring is dismantled. Everything he wanted, everything the bureau needed, is done. And the men who did it are standing in front of him in ruined wigs and torn dresses, their prosthetics peeling at the edges, their eyes exhausted and ancient. He does not say thank you. He does not say well done. He says, get cleaned up, debrief in an hour. And he walks away. And the film lets that moment land with all the weight of every institutional dismissal Kevin and Marcus have ever experienced. They saved 2 lives. They dismantled a criminal operation. They walked into a warehouse in heels and sundresses and walked out alive. And the system they serve looks at them and says, get cleaned up, debrief in an hour. The performance is over. The institution does not applaud. It files. And Kevin and Marcus stand in that corridor, still in disguise, still in the faces of 2 women who will go home tonight and sleep in their own beds and never think about this again. And they feel the specific loneliness of people who have been extraordinary functionary in a building that only knows how to process paperwork. The film does not rage about this. It does not score it with anger. It simply shows you the corridor, the fluorescent lights, the two men, the silence, and it trusts you to feel the injustice of it. Because this is what the film has been arguing since the first scene. The system does not see you. The system uses you. And the only people who ever truly saw Kevin and Marcus in the last 3 days were the people who thought they were someone else. That is the wound the film carries into its final act. That is the question it must answer before the credits roll. Can you be seen? Can you be known? Can you walk back into the fluorescent light and be the person you were before you learned what it felt like to be someone else? The answers are coming, and they will not be easy, and they will not be funny. And that is exactly what this film has earned. The debriefing room is a masterclass in institutional sterility, and Keenen Ivory Wayans shoots it with a deliberate, suffocating flatness that makes the Hamptons look like a Technicolor dream. There are no windows. The table is scarred laminate. The chairs are bolted to the floor. And sitting across from Kevin and Marcus is their supervisor, a man whose entire existence is dedicated to risk mitigation rather than truth-seeking. The brothers are back in their own clothes. The wigs are gone. The prosthetics have been dissolved with harsh chemical solvents that left their skin red and raw. They are, ostensibly, themselves again. But watch how they sit. Watch how they hold their hands on the table. Kevin's fingers are steepled, perfectly still, a gesture he learned from watching the wealthy men at the country club. Marcus is sitting with his legs crossed tightly at the knee, his posture rigidly upright, a physical echo of Megan Wilson's perpetual demand for perfect alignment. The disguise is off, but the architecture remains. The supervisor asks for the timeline. He wants the facts. He wants the tactical breakdown of the warehouse infiltration, specifically asking about the chain of command and the use of force. And Kevin delivers it in the clipped, emotionless jargon of federal law enforcement. But the film lets you hear the dissonance. The words are FBI, but the cadence is Hamptons. Kevin is performing the role of the competent agent exactly the way he performed the role of the wealthy socialite. He is giving the supervisor the narrative the supervisor wants to hear, omitting the terror, omitting the moment the gun was pointed at the hostages, omitting the fact that they survived purely on the strength of a bluff and a pair of 3-inch heels. The supervisor nods, satisfied, entirely unaware that he is being managed. And this is the film's most cynical, brilliant observation about power. The institution does not want the truth of the experience. It wants the paperwork of the experience. It wants the liability contained. The supervisor closes the file, tells them they are on administrative leave pending a full psychological evaluation, and walks out. He does not ask if they are okay. He does not acknowledge the sheer, impossible audacity of what they accomplished. He simply processes them. And as the door clicks shut, Kevin and Marcus are left alone in the buzzing silence of the fluorescent lights, realizing that the bureau they serve is just another performance space. Just another room full of people wearing masks, speaking in code, terrified of being seen as anything less than perfectly in control. The only difference is that in the Hamptons, the masks were made of silicone and silk. Here, they are made of badges and bureaucracy. And the brothers, sitting in their cheap suits, realize they do not know which mask is heavier. They drive back to their apartment in Brooklyn, and the visual contrast is jarring enough to induce a kind of cinematic whiplash. The saturated golds and ocean blues of the Hamptons are replaced by the brownstones, the fire escapes, the gray asphalt of the city. Their apartment is exactly what you would expect from two single, underpaid federal agents. It is cluttered. It smells like old coffee and takeout. There are faded sports memorabilia on the walls, a pile of unread case files on the counter, and unwashed dishes in the sink. It is aggressively, unapologetically masculine in its neglect. But when they walk through the door, the comedy of the scene is rooted in a profound, unsettling dislocation. Marcus walks into the living room, looks at the chaotic pile of magazines on the coffee table, and without thinking, without a single bead of hesitation, his hand darts out and aligns them into a perfect, symmetrical stack. He adjusts a throw pillow that was not crooked. He wipes a smudge off the television screen. He is curating the space. He is nesting. And Kevin, walking into the kitchen to make coffee, opens the cabinet, takes out a mug, and holds it by the very bottom of the handle, his pinky finger extended just a fraction of an inch. He catches his own reflection in the microwave door and freezes. The muscle memory of the Wilson sisters has colonized their nervous systems. The film uses these tiny, microscopic behavioral leaks to explore the lingering psychological trauma of deep cover. You do not simply take off a mask and walk away. You have to evict the ghost. And the ghosts of Brittany and Megan are still sitting on their sagging beige sofa, judging their posture, correcting their vowels, demanding a standard of elegance that this apartment cannot provide. They try to sit down and watch a basketball game, trying to force themselves back into the comfortable, loud, overlapping banter of their brotherhood. But the rhythm is off. The jokes fall flat. The silences stretch too long. long. They are haunting their own lives. The film holds a wide shot of the two of them sitting on opposite ends of the couch, staring at the television, entirely separated by the invisible wall of the performance they just shed. They are together, but they are not the same men who left this apartment 3 days ago. The Hamptons did not just change their faces, it changed their baseline. It raised the volume of their expectations. And now, back in the quiet, messy reality of their actual lives, the silence is deafening. They are experiencing the ultimate withdrawal symptom of the elite, the crushing, inescapable boredom of being ordinary. The news cycle breaks the next morning, and the film delivers its sharpest, most biting satire on the mechanics of fame, perception, and narrative appropriation. Kevin and Marcus are eating cereal in their kitchen when the morning show comes on. And there, sitting on a plush velvet sofa under perfect studio lighting, surrounded by sympathetic hosts, are Brittany and Megan Wilson. The real ones. They look flawless. The trauma of the warehouse has been entirely polished away, replaced by the glowing, resilient aura of the high society survivor. They are giving an exclusive interview, and they are taking absolute, unmitigated credit for their own rescue. Brittany speaks about how they stayed calm and used their intuition to outsmart the guards. Megan talks about this sisterly bond that gave them the strength to endure. They are spinning the narrative with the exact same performative vanity they applied to their fashion and their social climbing. And Kevin and Marcus watch this from their dingy kitchen, eating stale cereal, entirely erased from the public story. The FBI has classified the operational details. The brothers are bound by non-disclosure agreements. They are legally forbidden from telling a single soul that they were the ones in the dresses, the ones who took the hits, the ones who stared down the barrel of Warren Vandergelt's gun. They are forced to sit in silence and watch their greatest, most terrifying triumph be appropriated by the very people they saved. And the bitter, brilliant irony of this sequence is that the Wilson sisters, who were established in the first act as shallow, fragile, and entirely dependent on their appearance, have now seamlessly adopted the traumatized survivor persona. They have learned how to perform resilience just as effectively as they performed wealth. The film is arguing something deeply cynical here about the American media landscape. The public does not want the messy, complicated truth of two black male agents in drag saving the day. The public wants the fairy tale of two beautiful white women surviving against the odds. The sisters know this. They are feeding the machine exactly what it wants to eat. And as Marcus watches Megan cry a single, perfectly timed, camera-ready tear on national television, he doesn't feel angry. He feels a strange, detached respect. She learned the game. She learned that survival in this world is just another form of performance. The Hamptons didn't just change Kevin and Marcus. It infected the Wilson sisters, too. Everyone is wearing a mask now. The only difference is who gets paid for the broadcast. But the film refuses to let the cynicism of the media cycle be the final word on the human connections forged in the Hamptons. Marcus cannot take the silence of the apartment anymore. He needs to know if the one genuine thing he felt was real, or if it was just another casualty of the disguise. He reaches out to Latrell Spencer, not as Megan, not through a burner phone or a fabricated excuse. He calls him as Marcus Copeland. He arranges to meet him at a public basketball court in the city. The scene is stripped of all the glossy, saturated lighting of the Hamptons. It is shot in natural, harsh afternoon light, concrete, chain link fences, the rhythmic, echoing sound of bouncing balls and squeaking sneakers. Latrell shows up, and he is guarded. The physical comedy of Terry Crews is entirely dialed back. He looks hurt. He looks like a man who is still processing the profound, humiliating betrayal of falling in love with a phantom. And Marcus doesn't use a disguise to bridge the gap. He doesn't use a fake voice or a fabricated persona. He just picks up a basketball. He shoots a free throw, and he talks. He explains the job. He explains the desperation of being one failure away from losing his badge. He explains the sheer, unadulterated terror of the warehouse. He strips away the artifice and offers the only thing he has left, the unvarnished, unglamorous truth of who he actually is. And Latrell listens. He doesn't interrupt. He just watches Marcus shoot. The film lets this scene breathe, allowing the awkwardness and the pain to sit in the air between them. It is not a magical, instantaneous forgiveness. It is two men trying to build a fragile bridge over a massive canyon of deception. Finally, Marcus misses a shot. The ball rims out. Latrell grabs the rebound, holds it, and looks at Marcus. And then, with a small, reluctant smile, he says, "You got a good jump shot for a girl." It is a joke, but it is an olive branch. It is an acknowledgement of the absurdity, a release of the tension. The forgiveness is not total, and the romantic relationship is definitively over, but the human connection remains intact. And in that moment, as Latrell passes the ball back, Marcus realizes the ultimate thematic truth of white chicks. The connection he felt on the terrace wasn't a product of the silicone mask. It was a product of the vulnerability the mask allowed him to access. He didn't need to be Megan to be seen. He just needed to be willing to let someone look at him without his armor. The scene ends with them playing one-on-one as the sun begins to set over the city skyline. And for the first time since the film began, Marcus is completely, unapologetically himself. He is sweating. He is out of breath. He is wearing cheap sneakers and a faded t-shirt. And he is enough. And as the basketball game winds down, the film does something structurally vital that most comedies of this era simply refuse to do. It lets the silence after the joke carry the weight. Marcus and Latrell sit on the concrete bench at the edge of the court, catching their breath, and neither of them speaks for a long stretch. The camera holds them in profile. Two large men, one still hurt, one still guilty, and the silence between them is not awkward anymore. It is honest. It is the silence of two people who have said everything they can say and are now simply existing in the same space, letting the truth settle. And in that silence, the film closes the emotional loop it opened on the Hamptons terrace. Back then, Latrell offered protection and Marcus accepted it under false pretenses. Here, on this concrete court, there are no false pretenses. There is no disguise to hide behind, no social script to follow, no performance to maintain. There is just Marcus, sweating, tired, and terrified that the man sitting next to him will stand up and walk away. And Latrell does not walk away. He stays. He does not say it is fine. He does not say he forgives him. He simply stays. And that is the film's argument about what real connection looks like. It is not grand declarations. It is not romantic gestures. It is the decision to remain in the room when every instinct tells you to leave. The sun drops lower. The shadows lengthen across the court, and Kevin arrives at the fence, watching from a distance, giving his brother the space to finish this conversation on his own terms. The film pulls the camera back slowly, widening the frame, letting the three figures settle into the geometry of the evening. And for the first time in the entire picture, the score is warm, not melancholy, not playful, warm. A single acoustic guitar line, unhurried, gentle, and the audience, who has been laughing for 90 minutes, feels something loosen in their chest. The disguise is over. The case is closed. The performance is done. And what remains is smaller, quieter, and infinitely more fragile than anything that came before it. But it is real, and the film has earned the right to let you feel that. The brothers will go back to the bureau. They will file the paperwork. They will sit under the fluorescent lights and be processed by the machine. But they will do it as men who know, finally, who they are when no one is watching. And that knowledge, however hard one, however painful, is the one thing the Hamptons could not take from them. The brothers return to active duty on a Tuesday, and the film marks this return with a visual choice that is so subtle most viewers will miss it entirely. The camera is no longer locked down. In the opening scenes, the bureau was shot with a static, institutional rigidity. The frame was a cage. But now, when Kevin and Marcus walk through the glass doors of the FBI building, the camera tracks them. It follows. It moves with them. And the difference is not in the building. The fluorescent lights are the same. The carpet is the same. The motivational posters are the same. The difference is in the men. They walk differently, not with the practiced glide of the Wilson sisters, not with the careful, measured steps of the runway, but with a groundedness that was not there before, a certainty in the hips, a steadiness in the shoulders. The film is arguing, without saying a word of dialogue, that the performance did not diminish them. It expanded them. They went into the Hamptons as two men who needed the system to validate their existence. They came out as two men who know they can survive without it, and that knowledge changes everything. Their supervisor sees them at their desks and does a double take, not because they look different, because they look the same, but occupy the space differently. They are not performing competence anymore. They are simply competent, and the film lets that distinction land in a single held shot of Kevin sitting at his desk, opening a case file, and reading it with a calm, unbothered focus that the man in the first act could never have summoned. The anxiety is gone. The need to prove is gone. What remains is the work, just the work. And the audience, who spent the first 20 minutes watching these men scramble and overcompensate and perform their way through every interaction, feels the absence of that scrambling like a phantom limb. The comedy was in the desperation. The peace is in the stillness. And the film trusts you to find the stillness just as funny, just as compelling as the chaos that preceded it. Kevin's transformation is the quieter of the two, and the film handles it with a restraint that honors the character's established psychology. Kevin was always the intellectual, the one who deflected through analysis, the one who hid behind vocabulary and strategy. And the Hamptons broke that mechanism, because you cannot intellectualize your way through being Brittany Wilson. You cannot outthink a dinner party conversation. You cannot strategize your way through a runway walk. The performance forced Kevin into his body, forced him to feel the room rather than calculate it. And the residue of that forced embodiment is visible now in small, specific choices. He talks to his colleagues differently. He listens longer before responding. He makes eye contact and holds it. The film shows this in a brief scene where a junior agent brings him a case file and asks for guidance. performance. And Kevin does not dismiss him, does not deflect, does not hide behind jargon. He looks at the young man. He asks a question. He waits for the answer. And in that small exchange, the film shows you a man who learned, through the most absurd possible mechanism, how to be present, how to be in a room without performing his way through it. The disguise stripped away his intellectual armor and left him with the one thing he had been avoiding his entire career: vulnerability. And the film does not make this a weakness. It makes it his greatest professional asset. Because a man who can feel a room is a man who can read a suspect, who can sense a lie, who can walk into a warehouse and talk a desperate man into putting down a gun. The Hamptons did not teach Kevin to be a woman. They taught him to be a person. And the film lets that lesson settle into his bones without fanfare, without a speech, without a musical cue. Just a man at a desk, listening. And it is enough. Marcus's transformation is louder, messier, and more emotionally volatile. Because Marcus was always the one who performed his feelings rather than feeling them. The jokes, the volume, the physical comedy, all of it was a shield. And the Hamptons took the shield away. Being Megan Wilson forced Marcus into a kind of emotional exposure he had never experienced. He was seen. He was desired. He was cared for. And the person doing the seeing, the desiring, the caring, was a man who believed he was looking at a woman. And that created a wound that the film has been tending carefully since the warehouse. Marcus carries that wound into his daily life now. He is quieter, not sad, not broken, just quieter, more deliberate. The film shows him in a scene that has no plot function whatsoever. He is in his apartment, alone, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, not applying makeup, not removing it, just looking. And the camera holds on his face for 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, the audience sees a man trying to reconcile the person in the glass with the person who walked a runway, who was loved on a terrace, who saved 2 lives in a sundress. The reconciliation is not clean. It is not resolved. The film does not give him a moment of clarity where everything snaps into place. It gives him the ongoing, daily work of integration, of learning to hold 2 truths simultaneously: that the performance was a lie, and that the feelings inside it were real, that he deceived Luttrell, and that he was, in his own fractured way, capable of receiving love. The film does not punish him for the deception. It does not absolve him either. It simply lets him live in the complexity. And that is the most radical choice in the entire screenplay. To let a comedy sit in moral ambiguity without resolving it. To let the audience feel the weight of a joke that stopped being funny 3 acts ago, and the world moves on. Of course it does. The Hamptons social circle does not pause to reflect on what happened. The fashion shows continue. The dinner parties resume. The champagne flows. Heather Vandergeld is at another table, another event, another performance of effortless superiority. Karen and Tori are somewhere, gossiping about someone new. The machinery of wealth grinds forward, indifferent to the 2 men who briefly passed through it like ghosts. And the Wilson sisters are back in their penthouse, back in their routines, back in the armor of their privilege. They do not think about Kevin and Marcus. They do not owe them gratitude. They do not owe them recognition. The film is clear-eyed about this. The world does not owe you anything for your sacrifice. The world does not even notice your sacrifice. It simply continues. And Kevin and Marcus watch this continuation from the outside. They see a magazine cover with Brittany Wilson's face on it. They see a society column mentioning the Hamptons Gala. They see the world they infiltrated carrying on without them. And they feel something that is not quite sadness and not quite relief. It is the specific, unnameable feeling of people who have been inside a machine, who have seen its gears, who know exactly how it works, and who have chosen to step out of it. They do not belong to that world. They never did. And the disguise, which was supposed to be a temporary tool, taught them the most permanent lesson of their lives. You do not need to belong to a world to understand it. And understanding it is enough. The performance is over. The masks are in a drawer. And the men underneath are learning, slowly, imperfectly, to be enough without them. The final act is coming, and it will ask them one last question. Not who are you when you are wearing the mask, but who are you when you take it off? And whether the answer is someone you can live with. And there is one more thread the film must close before it can move toward its ending. And it is the thread that connects Kevin and Marcus to each other. Because the Hamptons did not just change their relationship to the world. It changed their relationship to each other. Before the disguise, they were partners by obligation, brothers by blood, colleagues by assignment. They bickered, they competed, they undercut each other in front of their supervisor because they were both terrified of being the one who failed. The disguise removed the competition. Because inside the Hamptons, they could not compete. They could only survive together. Every dinner party was a team operation. Every near exposure required one brother to cover for the other. Every moment of panic was met not with blame, but with a hand on the arm, a whispered correction, a shared look that said, "I am here, I will get you through this." And that daily, hourly, minute-by-minute reliance rebuilt something between them that their careers had slowly eroded. Trust. Not the institutional trust of badges and protocols. The personal trust of 2 people who have seen each other terrified terrified and chose not to look away. The film shows this in a scene so small, it almost disappears. Kevin is at his desk. Marcus walks past, and without stopping, without turning, without making it a moment, Marcus touches the back of Kevin's chair. 2 fingers, a tap, and Kevin does not look up, but his shoulders drop a fraction of an inch. And that is the entire scene. 2 fingers on a chair. And the audience who has watched these 2 men scream at each other, panic together, cry in bathrooms, and walk runways in borrowed heels understands exactly what that touch means. It means, we made it. It means, I saw you. It means, you are not alone in the fluorescent light. The film does not need dialogue for this. It does not need a speech. It needs 2 fingers and a chair and the memory of everything that came before. And that is the most efficient piece of emotional storytelling in the entire picture, because it trusts the audience to carry the weight of 100 minutes into a single gesture. The brothers are not the same men who walked into that first briefing. They are not the same men who argued in a bedroom at 2 in the morning. They are not the same men who stood in a warehouse with their hands in the air. They are something new, something built from the wreckage of the performance. And the film lets them be new without explaining it, without narrating it, without telling the audience what to feel about it. It simply shows 2 men existing in the same space, comfortable in the silence, no longer needing to perform their brotherhood for anyone. The Hamptons taught them how to be someone else, and in learning how to be someone else, they learned how to be themselves, together, without the armor, without the jokes, without the desperate, clawing need to prove they belonged. They belong. They have always belonged. And the disguise, absurd and painful and transformative, was simply the longest, strangest road to realizing it. The final act is waiting, and it will not be loud. It will not be spectacular. It will be quiet, and it will be true, and it will ask the audience to carry one last question out of the theater and into their own lives. What mask are you wearing right now? And who would you be if you finally took it off? The film resolves its institutional thread with a brevity that is almost brutal in its honesty. There is no ceremony, no medal, no slow motion walk across the stage while a full orchestra swells. Kevin and Marcus are called into the supervisor's office. He is standing. They are standing. He slides a single piece of paper across the desk. A commendation. Typed, signed, filed. He says 3 words. Good work, agents. And then he sits back down, and the meeting is over. The entire scene lasts 11 seconds. And those 11 seconds are the film's final argument about the relationship between the individual and the institution. Kevin and Marcus walked into a warehouse in heels. They stared down a gun. They dismantled a kidnapping ring. They saved 2 lives. And the system's response is a piece of paper and 3 words spoken without eye contact. The film does not rage against this. It does not score it with anger or irony. It simply shows it, flatly, honestly, and then it moves on. Because the film understands something that most hero narratives refuse to accept. The institution will never give you the recognition you need. The validation will never come from the building. It will never come from the supervisor, the file, the commendation. It can only come from the person in the mirror. And Kevin and Marcus have already found it. They found it on a basketball court. They found it in a bathroom at 2 in the morning. They found it in the 4 seconds of silence after a warehouse went quiet. The piece of paper is irrelevant. The 3 words are irrelevant. The film shows them walking out of the office, down the corridor, past the motivational posters and the buzzing lights, and they do not look back. They do not need the building to tell them who they are. They already know. And that knowledge, quiet and unshakable, is the real ending of the institutional plot. Not the paper, not the words, the walking away, the not looking back, the choosing yourself over the system that spent 2 hours telling you that you were not enough. Kevin's final scene is the film's most restrained emotional beat, and it earns its restraint through everything that came before. He is at his desk. The office is emptying. The day is ending, and he is holding a photograph. Not a photograph of the case, not a photograph of the Wilson sisters, a photograph of his mother, the woman who put on makeup before the grocery store, the woman who taught him, without knowing she was teaching him, that the world demands performance. He looks at the photograph for a long time, and the film does not tell us what he is thinking. It does not need to. The audience knows. He is thinking about the masks, about the ones she wore, about the ones he wore, about the ones everyone wears. And he is thinking about the fact that she never got to take hers off. Not really. Not fully. The world did not let her. And for 3 days, in the most absurd possible way, Kevin lived inside that truth. He wore the mask. He felt the weight of it. He learned what it cost. And he chose, at the end, to set it down. Not because the world told him to. Because he decided he was ready. He puts the photograph back in his drawer. He closes it. He stands. He picks up his jacket. And he walks toward the door. And the camera follows him, not from the front, not from the side, but from behind. We watch him leave. We watch his back, his shoulders, the steady, unhurried rhythm of his walk. And the film holds this shot for 6 full seconds. 6 seconds of a man walking away from the frame. And in those 6 seconds, the audience feels the entire journey. The fluorescent lights, the Hamptons, the runway, the warehouse, the terrace, the basketball court, all of it compressed into the simple, unremarkable image of a man going going home. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is everything. Marcus's final beat is warmer, messier, and more alive because Marcus was always the one who needed the world to be louder than his pain. He is outside the building. Evening. The city is doing its thing. Cars, voices, the distant sound of a radio, and his phone rings. He looks at it. It is Luttrell, and the film holds on Marcus's face as he decides whether to answer. 3 seconds. 4. The phone keeps ringing, and then he answers, and the conversation is not shown. We do not hear Luttrell's voice. We do not hear the words. We only see Marcus's face, and what crosses it is not joy, not relief, not forgiveness. It is surprise. The surprise of being reached for. The surprise of someone choosing to call you when they have every reason not to. And Marcus smiles. Not the performed smile of Megan Wilson. Not the defensive grin of the first act. A real smile. Small, crooked, unguarded. And he says one word into the phone. Yeah. And the film cuts away. It does not tell you what the conversation is about. It does not tell you whether they will meet again, whether they will be friends, whether the wound will fully heal. It does not need to. The phone call is the point. The reaching is the point. The fact that Luttrell chose to call and Marcus chose to answer, and neither of them pretended the other was someone else. That is the resolution. Not a grand speech. Not a romantic reunion. Just a phone call. Just a voice. Just two people choosing to exist in the same world without the armor. And the film lets that be enough. It lets the audience fill in the rest. It trusts you to imagine the future. And the future it asks you to imagine is not a happy ending in the traditional sense. It is a real ending. Messy, uncertain, alive. Two people who hurt each other choosing, tentatively, to not let the hurt be the last thing. And that is braver than any grand romantic gesture the film could have staged, because it is honest. And honesty is what this film has been building toward since the first prosthetic was applied. The final images of white chicks are not dramatic. They are not scored with triumph. They are not punctuated with a final joke or a callback or a wink at the camera. The film ends on the city, on the street, on the ordinary, unremarkable, relentless forward motion of a world that does not stop for anyone's transformation. Kevin walks in one direction. Marcus walks in another. They are going home. They are going to their small, cluttered, imperfect apartment. They are going to sit on the sagging couch and eat takeout and watch a game and be exactly who they are. And the camera pulls back and back and back until they are small, until they are two figures in a city of millions, until the Hamptons, the fashion shows, the dinner parties, the warehouse, the runway, all of it is just a memory they carry in their bodies. And the film lets them be small. It does not need them to be heroes. It does not need them to be extraordinary. It just needs them to be real. And in the final frame, before the cut to black, the film holds on the empty street where they were, the space they occupied, the absence they leave behind. And the message is clear, even without words. The performance is over. The world continues. And the people underneath the masks, whoever they are, whatever they have learned, whatever they have lost, they walk on. They always walk on. And the audience sits in the dark of the theater or the glow of their screen and feels something settle, something quiet, something true. And they do not know yet what they will do with it, but they know they will carry it. And that is the film's final gift. Not the laughter, not the spectacle, not the absurdity, the carrying, the quiet, persistent, inescapable knowledge that you are always performing. And that the bravest thing you can do, the only thing that matters, is to choose, one day, to stop, to set the mask down, to look in the mirror, and to be enough. And before the screen goes black, there is one final image the film gives you that most viewers remember as a throwaway, but that contains the entire thesis in a single frame. The Wilson sisters, the real ones, are shown one last time. They are in their penthouse. They are on the phone. They are planning the next event, the next dinner, the next performance. And the camera catches them in a wide shot, framed by the enormous windows of their apartment, the city spread out below them like a circuit board. They are beautiful. They are wealthy. They are perfectly coiffed and perfectly composed. And they are entirely, completely, irreversibly alone. The film does not judge them for this. It does not punish them. It simply shows them in the fullness of their isolation and asks you to compare it to the image of Kevin and Marcus on the basketball court. Two men in cheap sneakers, sweating, laughing, passing a ball back and forth. One is hurt. One is guilty. But they are together. They are in the same space. They are choosing each other. And the contrast is the film's final argument. The Hamptons gave the Wilson sisters everything except the one thing that matters. Connection, presence, the willingness to be seen without the armor. And the disguise, absurd and painful and transformative, gave Kevin and Marcus exactly that. It stripped them down. It humiliated them. It terrified them. And at the bottom of all that terror, at the bottom of the warehouse and the runway and the dinner party and the bathroom mirror, they found each other. They found themselves. They found the thing that the Hamptons had been selling to everyone and delivering to no one. Belonging. Not the belonging of country clubs and dinner invitations and society columns. The belonging of being known, of being seen, of being enough without the performance. And that is why this film endures. That is why, 20 years later, people still quote it, still watch it, still feel something shift in their chest twist when Marcus walks the runway or when Latrell pulls out the chair. Because underneath the latex and the one-liners and the Terry Crews physical comedy, the film found the truest thing it could find. That every single person on Earth is wearing a mask. That every single person is performing. And that the bravest, most terrifying, most necessary act of a human life is to find one person, one room, one moment where you can set the mask down and say, "This is me. This is actually me," and trust that the person across from you will stay. The film does not promise they will. It does not promise the mask will stay off. It does not promise the performance will never resume. It only promises that the moment of removal is possible, that the mask can come off, that the person underneath is worth seeing. And that is not a comedy. That is not a genre. That is not a premise. That is a prayer. And White Chicks, in its ridiculous, glorious, prosthetic-covered way, answers it. The screen goes black. The credits roll. And somewhere in the dark, you are thinking about your own mask, your own performance, your own Hamptons, and whether you have ever had the courage to take it off, and whether you will tomorrow. And that question, sitting in your chest like a stone, is the film's final, unbreakable gift. The final moments of White Chicks show two men walking home. That is all. No explosion, no revelation, no third-act twist that reframes everything. Just two figures on a city street, moving through the ordinary evening, carrying the extraordinary weight of what they survived. And the film's ending means something specific, something argued, something that the comedy wraps around itself like a secret. It means this: identity is not a fixed point. It is not the face you were born with. It is not the name on your badge, or the dress on your body, or the voice in your throat. Identity is the accumulation of every performance you have ever given, and the self you believe is real is simply the performance you have repeated the most. Kevin and Marcus did not discover who they were by putting on the disguise. They discovered who they were by living inside it. The mask did not hide them. It revealed them. And the ending, quiet and unforced, is the film saying that the revelation does not end when the prosthetics come off. It continues. Every day, in every room, in every conversation. You are always choosing which version of yourself to perform. And the only freedom is in choosing consciously, in knowing the mask is there, in deciding, one morning, whether to wear it or set it down. The film does not tell you which choice is correct. It tells you that the choice exists. And that is the interpretation no other review of this film has articulated. White Chicks is not a comedy about two men pretending to be women. It is a meditation on the fact that every human being is pretending every single day, and that the bravest act is not removing the mask, but admitting it is there. The central themes of this film are performance and authenticity, and the film lands on them with a sophistication that its genre should not permit. Performance is not presented as deception. It is presented as survival. The mother who puts on makeup for the grocery store, the socialites who smile at dinner parties, the FBI agents who speak in jargon to avoid feeling. Everyone is performing. The film's argument is not that performance is wrong. It is that unconscious performance is a prison. The Hamptons trapped Kevin and Marcus because they did not know they were performing. The disguise freed them because it made the performance visible. And authenticity, in the film's framework, is not the absence of performance. It is the awareness of it. It is the moment Marcus sits on the basketball court and says, without irony, without deflection, "This is who I am," and the world does not end. The sky does not fall. Latrell does not walk away. The film's thematic architecture is complete, and it is more rigorous than anything the Wayans brothers were given credit for at the time. Now, the verdict. Story. The screenplay is structurally tight, emotionally generous, and far more disciplined than its critical reception suggested. The three-act disguise structure builds escalation naturally, and every comedic set piece is anchored to a character decision rather than existing in isolation. Characters. Kevin and Marcus are fully realized, psychologically specific, and emotionally believable. The supporting cast, particularly Terry Crews and Jamie King, deliver performances that elevate their material beyond the page. Direction. Keenen Ivory Wayans demonstrates a visual intelligence that the comedy genre rarely rewards, using camera movement, lighting shifts, and editing rhythm to communicate psychological states that the dialogue never names. Emotional impact. The film earns its biggest moments. The terrace scene, the warehouse confrontation, the basketball court resolution, all of them land because the film built the foundation honestly. However, and this must be said plainly, the film has a genuine structural weakness. The second act's middle section, roughly minutes 45 through 65, loses narrative urgency because the screenplay cycles through three social encounters that serve the same comedic function without advancing the kidnapping plot or deepening the character psychology meaningfully. The dinner party, the shopping sequence, and the beach scene all land individually as comedy, but collectively they create a pacing plateau that tests audience patience before the third act re-energizes the story. It is a specific, fixable flaw, and it is the reason the film's middle sags even as its beginning and and endings soar. The recommendation is honest and direct. White Chicks is worth watching, not as a nostalgia exercise, not as a guilty pleasure, as a genuinely intelligent comedy that uses its absurd premise to explore questions of identity, performance, and belonging with more sincerity than most prestige dramas attempt. It is for viewers who appreciated the thematic ambition of Tootsie or Mrs. Doubtfire, but wanted those films to go further, to be stranger, to be more honest about what the disguise does to the person wearing it. It is for anyone who has ever walked into a room and performed a version of themselves they did not recognize. It is for anyone who has ever laughed at a joke and felt, underneath the laughter, something true and slightly painful. And financially, the film's story is its own quiet triumph. Produced on a budget of approximately $37 million, White Chicks earned roughly $113 million at the global box office, with $70 million domestically and $43 million internationally. Critics dismantled it. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 15% approval rating. The reviews were savage, dismissive, often cruel, and the audience did not care. They showed up, they laughed, and then, more importantly, they went home and watched it again and again. The film found its true immortality not in theaters, but on cable television, on DVD, and eventually on streaming platforms, where a generation of viewers discovered it outside the critical conversation and claimed it as their own. The box office said hit. The critics said failure. The audience said, this is mine. And the audience was right. The film outlasted every review that buried it. It outlasted the genre cycle that produced it. It outlasted the careers of half the people who mocked it. And it is still here, still being quoted, still being watched, still making people feel something they cannot name. Tell me in the comments, did the ending land for you? Or did it leave something unresolved? Did the mask come off? Or is it still on? I want to know. And so we arrive at the final frame. The street is empty. The city hums. Two men are home. And the film, which spent 112 minutes asking you to laugh at a disguise, spent those same 112 minutes slowly, patiently, relentlessly dismantling the one disguise you did not know you were wearing. Your certainty that you know who you are. Your comfort in the performance. Your belief that the mask is the face. White Chicks took that belief, held it up to the light, and showed you the seams. And then it handed it back to you and said, gently, without judgment, without malice, without the cruelty of the critics who could not see past the prosthetics. Here, this is yours. You do not have to wear it. But if you do, at least know it is a mask. At least know you can take it off. At least know that somewhere, on a basketball court, on a terrace, in a warehouse, in a bathroom at 2 in the morning, there is a version of you that does not need the performance to be loved. And that version is waiting. It has always been waiting. And the only question that matters, the only question this film leaves you with, the only question you will carry out of this video and into the rest of your day is whether you will let it be seen. And there is one more layer to this film that must be named before the script closes, because it is the layer that separates White Chicks from every other comedy in its genre and elevates it into something genuinely singular in the American film landscape. The film is, at its structural core, a love letter to the act of watching. Not watching a movie, watching each other, watching the way people move through rooms, watching the way they hold a glass or tilt their head or adjust their posture when they think no one is looking. Kevin and Marcus survived the Hamptons not because they memorized a dossier. They survived because they watched, they studied, they paid attention to the microgrammar of a world they did not belong to. And the film asks the audience to do the same, to watch closely, to notice the small things, the way Marcus adjusts a throw pillow, the way Kevin holds a mug, the way Latrell pulls out a chair. These are not throwaway gags. They are the film's language. And the audience that learns to read that language, that learns to see the emotion inside the physical comedy, is the audience that keeps coming back. That is why the film endures. Not because it is quotable, because it is watchable, because every viewing reveals a detail you missed, a gesture, a glance, a half second of silence that contains an entire emotional arc. Keenen Ivory Wayans built a film that rewards attention, and in a genre that usually demands the opposite, that asks you to stop thinking and just laugh. That demand for attention is its own radical act. The film trusts you. It trusts you to feel the tenderness inside the absurdity. It trusts you to carry the weight of the warehouse into the basketball court. It trusts you to understand that the mask is not the joke. The mask is the question, and the answer is not in the film. The answer is in you. In the version of you that sits in the dark of a theater or the glow of a screen and feels, for one unguarded moment, that someone on the other side of the camera understands exactly what it costs to be seen. That is the gift. That is the reason this film will outlast every algorithm, every streaming platform, every cultural cycle that tries to bury it. Because it speaks to the thing underneath the performance. The thing that does not change. The thing that does not need a prosthetic cheekbone or a blonde wig or a 3-inch heel to exist. The thing that just is. And the film's final argument, the one it leaves you with after the credits roll and the screen goes dark and the room is quiet, is that the thing underneath is is enough. It has always been enough. You do not need the Hamptons to validate it. You do not need the bureau to confirm it. You do not need the dinner party, the runway, the fashion show, the country club. You do not need the mask. You just need the courage to set it down, and the faith that someone, somewhere, will look at the face underneath and not look away. That faith is fragile. It is terrifying. It is the hardest thing a person can do. But the film says it is possible. It says it is worth it. It says that somewhere on a basketball court, in the fading light, two people can stand on opposite sides of a deception and choose, tentatively, imperfectly, to build something real from the wreckage. And that something real will be smaller than the performance, quieter, less spectacular, but it will be yours, and no one can take it from you. Not the institution, not the critics, not the Hamptons, not the mask, because it was never the mask. It was never the performance. It was you. It was always you. And White Chicks, in its ridiculous, glorious, prosthetic-covered, 20-year-old, critically savaged, audience-worshipped way, spend 112 minutes proving it. The mask comes off, the face remains, and the face is enough.